WION correspondent Lucy Hugh joins us live from Brussels. Good afternoon to you, Lucy. What are the latest updates that you have for us?
Well, I think a really interesting thing to look at is the fact that the death toll in Spain has now surpassed that of Italy. It's rising at a faster rate. Yesterday, there was a report of 27% increase in the number of dead by 462 to just over 2,100 in the country. The number of cases there now in excess of 33,000. Clearly, that's less than the 60,000 cases we've seen in Italy, but that death rate is now accelerating at a faster rate. Some positive signs from Italy that the quarantine measures may be starting to take some effect. For the second consecutive day, the death toll has fallen there. We saw a record high on Saturday of 800, but yesterday we saw 602. So that is a decrease. Certainly the health chief of the Lombardy North, that region in the north of Italy that's been the worst affected, was saying that there are signs of potentially some light at the end of the tunnel after a very difficult month. But clearly, the situation in Spain is worsening. We have reports of a giant conference centre just outside of Madrid now being used as a giant field hospital to house over 5,000 patients. And an ice rink is also being used as an enormous morgue as medics continue to grapple with now the second worst outbreak in Europe.
Lucy, we see much tighter controls in the United Kingdom. What do we make of Boris Johnson's move there? Can this be seen to be effective?
Yes, Boris Johnson, the UK Prime Minister, had been somewhat reticent to introduce a full lockdown. Unlike other European countries, Spain and Italy introduced these lockdown measures around a fortnight ago. Here in Belgium, we had a lockdown that kicked in last week. But Boris Johnson was holding back from going ahead with full lockdown measures. He was instead advising people to practice social distancing, to stay at home. But the advice was quite loose, and we had images over the weekend of people enjoying farmers' markets or in the parks with big groups of friends. So Boris Johnson was forced to take actions, and at 8:30 p.m. local time last night, he made a TV address to the nation where he instructed people to stay at home for all but essential travel, whether it's to go out for essential food supplies, to go to the bank or to the doctor. But of course, the police will be on the streets enforcing that new regulation, and it will be in place for 3 weeks. The number of cases there has now surpassed 6,500, and the death toll continues to mount. There are clear concerns about the impact on the NHS, which is worried that it may see a situation like the case in Italy, with medics inundated with very sick people demanding specialist care. Things like ventilators, which are and personal protective equipment. There are concerns that there are shortages in the UK of that crucial equipment to deal with that crisis. So Boris Johnson has now introduced this 3-week lockdown measures in the hope that that will contain any further spread of the coronavirus outbreak.
And Lucy, in France, they have spoken of the medication, the chloroquine, being used there. Edward Philippe, the Prime Minister, talking about that, and they have also imposed stricter regulations there. What is the trajectory and the latest update coming out of France?
Yes, the number of cases still continuing to increase in France. We're now just over 20,000 there. As you were saying, the lockdown measures have been stepped up. You're now only allowed to go out for exercise once a day, and it has to be within 2 kilometres of your house. Police very much out on the streets enforcing those rules. On the first 24 hours after that lockdown was introduced last week, 4,000 people were caught by the police, some of them given fines of as much as €135. So stricter measures now in place in France. Really, the situation, particularly in the hospitals in and around the north of France, around Paris, which is the worst affected region by the crisis, really dealing with severe shortages of specialist equipment, of shortages of beds, to the extent that now Germany and Switzerland are offering to support France in its efforts in dealing with cases in hospitals. So people are being transferred across borders for specialist care. So Emmanuel Macron has been praised for his quick and decisive response to the crisis. But as is the case in other European countries, we are still seeing the number of cases increasing. But there are hopes that we are now reaching the peak, and that given these very strict quarantine measures in place, that those cases will start to fall, and we will start to see the impact of the lockdown measures start to take some effect in the coming days and weeks. But those lockdown measures are meant to be in place until the beginning of April. We are getting many indications now that across the continent, those lockdown measures will be extended for at least a fortnight into the middle of April at the very least.
Right. Thank you for that report, Lucy Hugh, WION's correspondent, coming to us live from Brussels for the latest on the coronavirus pandemic in Europe.